billion for rebuilding after Katrina. The president insists America can handle it without raising taxes, but how? Ice capades. Why is the government sending trucks of ice to places that don't need it and running up the cost to taxpayers? Breast cancer. New details on mammograms that use digital images instead of x-rays. They're newer, but are they better? And Offbeat, the music that makes New Orleans famous.
You got them nagging old lady blues.
It may have stopped for now, but this city's musicians are ready to break the silence.
This is a special edition of NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams, reporting tonight from New Orleans.
And good evening once again from New Orleans, the city where the president addressed the nation last night, the population hub of this still crippled region that's now going to be the center of a massive reconstruction project that may cost $200 billion. The president described the government response as inadequate. People died in this city as a result. As we go on the air tonight, about 40% of the city of New Orleans is still underwater. And we got a new measure today of the toll of this catastrophe. In a survey of New Orleans evacuees who are now living in shelters in Houston, 84% said their homes have been either seriously damaged or destroyed entirely. And many say they will not be coming back here even after the massive reconstruction effort. We have several reports again tonight, and we're going to begin with NBC News Chief White House correspondent David Gregory. David, good evening.
Brian, good evening. You've broken it down. Americans will pay a steep price to rebuild the Gulf Coast region after Katrina. The president today said the country can handle it, but he hasn't spelled out exactly how we can afford it.
After pledging to launch the largest reconstruction effort the world has ever seen, today the president was asked to confront the country's financial realities.
Well, it's going to cost whatever it costs, and we're going to be wise about the money we spend.
But today, Mr. Bush ruled out tax hikes, saying Americans are getting hit hard enough by high gas prices.
Hey, and that is going to mean cutting other programs.
Today, White House economic advisors declined to identify where the cuts will come. Felt rebuilding the hurricane zone was a greater priority. Just 5% felt rebuilding Iraq was the priority. 1/3 said both were equally important. In addition to conservative, on Today this morning, urged the White House to roll back the Bush tax cuts.
We are borrowing the money from China, Japan, Korea, Saudi Arabia, to pay for the suffering of our people in the Gulf area, to pay for the Iraq war, and to cover my tax cut.
However big the price, from a focus on security to the safety net. The president at the National Cathedral pledging to confront the poverty Katrina harshly exposed.
As we clear away the debris of a hurricane, let us also clear away the legacy of inequality. Let us deliver new hope to communities that were suffering before the storm.
It is, some believe, the new start of a second term.
On Katrina, he can put down a plan, and he's got some chance of being able to actually implement that plan, given the tools the president has.
Last night, the president was forced to acknowledge that the government was overwhelmed by Katrina. Now he is determined to demonstrate at great cost what his administration can fix. Brian?
Thanks, David. David Gregory at the White House for us tonight. And since we've been on the air tonight, a new stat came out. This is a grim one. It's the revised death toll, revised upward. Now it stands at 816 from 6 states in this region. Last night here in this part of New Orleans, there was a brief flurry of excitement when the lights came on in just this part of town. In fact, just 30 minutes before the president's motorcade passed through, the street lights were glowing brightly, but it didn't last long. An hour after the president left, the power was off and we were back in the dark for a 17th straight night. Some places are coming back online here, and it's been a long haul. We get the latest tonight from NBC's Kevin Tibbles here in New Orleans. Kevin, good evening to you.
Brian, from those crowded shelters to the few open restaurants, displaced residents tuned in last night to see how their federal government plans to help them. Across Louisiana, where there was power, they watched the president from a sports bar in New Orleans.
I think he's doing the best he can now. but he got caught with his pants down.
To Petrie's Diner in West Wego, Louisiana.
I do believe in the president and the government that they will.
Just water and power and infrastructure. This is a city built on spirit, and nothing defines that more than a Mardi Gras parade. The floats and statues survived the storm. Organizers announced there will be Mardi Gras in February. But first,
we will stage a parade in New Orleans, a grand parade with marching bands, floats, beads, doubloons, the whole works.
But for now, the grueling work continues. The National Guard still going from house to flooded house. And environmental concerns. But tonight, Brian, in at least one small Mississippi town ravaged by Katrina, Friday night football is back at the local high school. Just another sign that people down here are working very hard to get things back to normal.
Thanks, Kevin. Kevin Tibbles with us here in New Orleans tonight. For many of the evacuees in this storm's path, it will be years before their lives get back to even a semblance of normal. We have an interesting preview tonight of what many of them may be calling home for the next few years. It can be found in Florida, hit by a different hurricane. The folks were hit by Charlie there just over a year ago. Here with that, NBC's Kerry Sanders.
Home sweet home, at least temporarily, as trailers like these will soon dot the landscape of Katrina's path, housing 300,000 displaced families.
If you were with us last night on this broadcast, then you saw the following scene. The scattered remnants of what was called at the time a refugee city on Interstate 10, the central artery through New Orleans. People were living on that highway for days before they were evacuated. On the highway, amid the trash and mattresses there just yesterday, we found this, a marriage certificate along with some family photos. And today, we found the owners.
They found our book sack with our papers and stuff.
Oh, wedding pictures and stuff?
Yeah. And our marriage certificate. I was sad about the photos because I thought I wasn't going to never see them again. And I cried about that. But then I realized I still had my life and my family, so it wasn't nothing I can do about the photos. But God bless me and somebody found them anyway.
Walter Stevenson and Georgette Hilton are in a shelter there in San Antonio, Texas. Katrina destroyed their home here. They lived on that highway for 3 days, and they were forced to leave things behind when they were finally evacuated. They say they are not coming back to New Orleans to live, but we sure will get their keepsakes to them in Texas. Up next as we continue from here this Friday night, NBC News In Depth. Trucks filled with ice for hurricane victims instead sent on an odyssey around the country, and your tax dollars are paying for every mile. We're back with NBC News In Depth tonight. We have heard a great deal already about how the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, mismanaged the immediate aftermath of this storm. Part of that was slowness in getting ice and badly needed water to victims. We decided to look at the ice situation tonight as a microcosm of the entire relief effort. We found that FEMA ordered plenty of ice, but getting it to those who need it has been an exercise in chaos. Reporting In Depth tonight, here is NBC News senior investigative correspondent Lisa Myers.
Outside New Orleans, Lori Rossetti waited an hour to get ice, to preserve food and chill her mother's insulin.
We just need this to keep coming and do what we have to do, you know, ration until we...
Says in the rush to respond to Katrina, the agency ordered too much ice. Rather than let it melt, they sent it to other parts of the country, ready for the next hurricane. But Wessel says FEMA just ordered more ice and rerouted some of his trucks again to Idaho News, Washington.
Up next, there is medical news to report tonight. A new study that says a new kind of mammogram may be a big improvement over the old X-ray film.
Former President Bill Clinton on relief for Katrina victims. Plus, his global summit tackles the world's toughest problems. A special conversation only on Meet the Press.
Katrina victims, home away from home. NBC Nightly News Monday.
The surge of violence in Iraq continued for a third day today. 11 people were killed in a suicide car bombing outside a Shiite mosque north of Baghdad. In all, more than 20 people died in violent incidents across Iraq today, pushing the 3-day death toll there to over 200. In California tonight, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger says he still has work to do and he's going to run for re-election. He made that announcement today in San Diego. With the election more than a year away, political observers say this early announcement of his is designed to give his sagging political fortunes some sort of a boost. We got word late today that Vice President Dick Cheney will be having minor surgery next weekend to treat a kind of aneurysm, the swelling of blood vessels in an artery behind his right knee. This is being described as elective surgery under local anesthesia. It will, however, require a short hospital stay. The vice president is expected to return to work shortly afterwards. And as we mentioned, there is health news to report tonight. It is about mammograms. A new study set out to answer this question: are newer and more expensive, higher-tech mammograms better than the traditional kind? Well, for some women, the answer to this appears to be yes. Here with the story tonight for us, NBC News Chief Science Correspondent Robert Bazell.
For decades, X-ray mammography captured on film has been the standard for breast cancer detection. New York.
On Wall Street today, stocks finished higher. The Dow was up more than 83 points. NASDAQ gained a bit more than 14 points. For the week, the Dow lost some ground, down almost 37. The NASDAQ was down just over 15 points on the week. We have another family reunion after this disaster to report to you tonight. Yesterday in Knoxville, Tennessee, television station WBIR arranged the reunion of a New Orleans father and his 12-year-old son. It's tough to watch, but it's the kind of thing going on every day in this region. Arnold Learson and his son Arnold Jr. hadn't seen each other since the day they, along with their grandmother and their dog, all escaped the rising floodwaters. They got separated in the aftermath, as so many did, and the television station tracked down the father and flew him to Knoxville, where the family will start a new life together, they say. After a break, when we come back, we'll take you to another location where the blues have been creeping back to New Orleans.
NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams, brought to you in part by Aflac. Ask about it at work.
Tonight, why was New Orleans? We're back from New Orleans, and there's a lot of talk recently about this city coming back. That will admittedly take a lot of things: a return of power and water, a huge cleanup, also a return of this region's chief export. That's the blues. To find the blues, you've usually got to come out at night. That means bucking the curfew. You've got to know where to go, and you've got to know who to see. It's called the Deck Bar. Proudly low rent, oysters in a bucket, and music powered by car battery. And it sounds just as good. But you really have to come here at night, as we did earlier this week. It's the best time to hear the blues. When the moon is out, the smokes are lit, along with the hurricane lamps. It's all they've got in a city without power. We had to conduct our interview with Oscar Caballero by flashlight.
We get all the cats from here in New Orleans come over and sit in with us.
Oscar is a Wednesday night fixture at the Deck Bar. He believes the return of the blues will be the signal that this city is back.
We'll get back to what we had. Forget about it, you know who.
And he is working toward that day.
It comes from the heart, and there's nothing like it. And it's going to come back. I'm sorry. Okay, we got a little shaky. Orleans and miss it both night and day. Well, I know in my heart that the feeling's getting stronger. More. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry.
My world's coming back. This whole
The musicians and customers of the Deck Bar, where the blues are coming back. And soon the equally important New Orleans export, jazz, will be back in the French Quarter, hopefully before too long. That's our broadcast for this Friday night. Don't forget Dateline tonight at 8, 7 Central. I'm Brian Williams reporting tonight from New Orleans. We'll see you Monday night. Have a good weekend. Good night.
Next, Renee Zellweger.
Tom Cameron Crazy.
Brett Hundley.
David Burke. John Chen. Tom Brokaw.
Tonight, the gathering storm, Tropical Storm Rita, gaining strength and heading for the Florida Keys, and new fears tonight that Louisiana could soon be in its path. Change of plans. The people of New Orleans trickling back home are now told not so fast. Don't come back just yet. North Korea's nukes. After a long standoff with the U.S., a possible deal to end North Korea's nuclear program. But can it be trusted? And clean cut with his small shear.